President Buhari thanks outgoing ECOWAS Commission President for sustaining unity in member states.
National Assembly seeks legal backing for cassava inclusion policy.
When passed into law, it will create market opportunities for Nigerian cassava farmers.
In 2023 census, population managers engage critical stakeholders on credible exercise.
We want to use this opportunity to ask Nigerians, please cooperate with the National Population Commission.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the planned nationwide protest to return university students to school.
Well, it would appear that the last is yet to be heard about the industrial action by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, which is more than 5 months now.
Now, the prolonged action has paralyzed not only academic activities, but also socio-economic businesses in the nation's many public and state universities, which obviously have been abandoned because of the lingering industrial action.
For now, there appears to be no respite in sight, as both parties, that is the federal government and ASU, have maintained their different positions.
Now, although the government set up another team to renegotiate the 2009 agreement reached by the two parties at the time, the team seems not to be making appreciable progress.
Indeed, and that is as both parties do not want to, are not ready to sheath their swords anytime soon. Now, the Nigeria Labour Congress, that's the NLC, says it will organize a nationwide protest for 2 days, effective today, with a view to returning the students back to their schools and classrooms as soon as possible.
But is the nationwide protest planned by the NLC the best way to settle the current industrial dispute between the federal government and ASU? Now, could the NLC opt also for a much better strategy to intervene? And ultimately, why is it difficult, as it were, for both the federal government and ASU to reach a negotiated agreement, considering the current challenges the country is facing?
Okay, so put in another way, are there better ways to reconcile the parties in the overall interest of all stakeholders, including parents, teachers, and of course the entire society? That's considering the impact on our socio-economic and educational development of the country. You know, might there be other, strategy to breaking, the logjam between the federal government and ASU? Is the protest the option? Can two wrongs make a right? Can we cancel a strike with another strike? These are some of the questions that are begging for answers. I welcome you to another edition of the program, Good Morning Nigeria. It's live on the network service of the NTA. I am Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak.
And I'm Kingsley Osadulo. I joined my colleague Claire to also welcome you to the program, and just to indicate that what the Nigeria Labour Congress is planning today is a protest. They have not declared a work stoppage. But how long the protest will last probably will depend on how they organize themselves at the various locations. Whether these are single location protests or whether they are street protests, it's also a matter that will unfold in the course of the day. But they say they've called on their affiliate members to join in the protest. Now, will those affiliate members take the entire day off work to go and join the protest? For how many hours can you protest? And if you don't return to work, what is the sanction that awaits you from your superiors back in the office? You could take a few hours off to say you want to join in the protest, but that is not to say that you'll be absent from duty for the 2 days that the NLC has proposed the protest. Well, in line with our tradition on Good Morning Nigeria, which is live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, we have our complimentary segments, and these include newspaper review and business. For now, here is Tessie Omeri, who has the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Tessie.
Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Claire. And good morning, Nigerians. Here is the morning news as we begin with bilateral ties. President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed gratitude to the outgoing president of the ECOWAS Commission, Jean-Claude Cassibro, for the role he had played in ensuring that the sub-regional body remains united, responsible and responsive. President Buhari made this known when he granted audience to the outgoing leader at the State House in Abuja. He said the ECOWAS president and his team showed capacity to deal with political tension and insecurity in some countries. President Buhari described Jean-Claude's tenure as very successful. President Muhammadu Buhari will today depart Abuja for Monrovia, Liberia, to attend the 175th Independence Anniversary celebration of the country. The trip signifies the importance attached to the security and well-being of Liberians and the rest of West Africa. President Buhari, who will be the special guest of honor at the event, joins other world leaders and organizations to rejoice with the people of Liberia at the event with the theme, Fostering Unity, Protecting Our Peace for Development and Prosperity. Nigeria played a leading role in the stabilization of West African nation in the early 90s, leading to the establishment of democratic rule, and has continued to assist the country in many ways, especially through the Technical Aid Corps scheme. In 2019, President Buhari was conferred with the highest national honor in Liberia, the Grand Cordon in the Most Venerable Order of Knighthood of the Pioneers of Republic of Liberia, in recognition of Nigeria's continued support towards the development of the country. The president's trip to Liberia, therefore, comes at a time when political instability and the return of coup d'etat have unended 2 to 3 decades of democratic order in the sub-region. Liberia, Sierra Leone, along with Nigeria, are going into elections in 2023, and President Buhari is expected to emphasize the importance of free, fair and credible elections and respect for rule of law throughout the sub-region, without which there cannot be security, peace and development. This may bring Nigeria and Liberia to table issues of cross-border terrorism with the aim of fostering or defense and trade ties. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has been discharged from the hospital following a successful surgical operation and recuperation. A statement from Dr. Nicholas Aduferen, Chief Personal Physician to the Vice President, indicates that Vice President Yemi Osinbajo was admitted to the Duchess Hospital, International Hospital, Lagos on July 16, 2022 on account of a right femur fracture and had corrective surgery without any complications. And relatives of victims of Abuja Kaduna train attack have picketed the headquarters of the Transportation Ministry in Abuja. At a protest, the relatives acknowledged government's efforts but pleaded that more should be done to quicken the process.
They are undergoing tremendous difficulty to the extent now that they have been threatened, their lives have been threatened.
I know a father who is 92 years old. He has a son in captivity. He has been sick for over 2 weeks now.
And government should declare an emergency on that issue, because anything can happen. We don't know. We are scared to death.
Inshallah, we will fight it together by the grace of God until everybody is reunited with their family. What I want you to do for me, please, for the sake of Allah, pray for us.
Meanwhile, 3 victims of the abducted Abuja Kaduna train have been released. National Assembly is working to give legal backing to federal government's policy on cassava inclusion. At a public hearing by the Senate Committee on Agriculture, the Cassava Cottage Processing Marketing Association of Nigeria says more than 1 billion naira approved for this policy in 2014 is still lying unused at the Bank of Industry.
When passed into law, it will create market opportunities for Nigerian cassava farmers.
This issue has long been under consideration, and I pray the National Assembly will expedite action on it.
The legal mechanism in the operation of a sector that is vital to the government's plan for self-sufficiency in food production and for the diversification of the economy.
National cassava processors and marketers stand to add value. When we add value, we have the HQCF, high quality cassava flour.
There are a lot of money that was given to us at that time to establish all these factory industries. That money is still lying idle with BOI, about 2.2 billion.
And key players in Nigeria's population management have been speaking on the 2023 population and housing census, advocating for an exercise of international standard. This was at the agenda at a separate meetings of the delegation of National Population Commission with the Governor of Ogun State, Dapo Abiodun, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, and the Alake of Egbalan, Oba Adedotun Aremu Gbadebo.
Census, just to know how many we are, is very important for policy and planning.
As a state government, we are looking forward to a very successful census exercise next year.
And we pray that in Nigeria of the future, will be more better than what we are having today. And the best way to start that future is to know how many are we.
We want to use this opportunity to ask Nigerians, please cooperate with the National Population Commission. Take this exercise, like I've always said, as your personal project. We want this data for Nigeria.
President Muhammadu Buhari has appointed Deputy Co-Marshal Dauda Alibiu as the acting Co-Marshal Federal Road Safety Corps following the retirement of Boboye Oyeyemi. This was revealed during the bowing out ceremony of former Co-Marshal Boboye Oyeyemi.
It is a formidable team of selfless and dutiful officers across all ranks that have contributed to the truly transformative achievements of over 34 years of existence of the Corps. During my tenure as the Corps Marshal and with the support of the management team, we were able to record successful projects and initiatives.
And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Claire and Kingsley after this break. Thanks for watching.
All right, welcome back to the program. If you've just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria, and time to talk a bit of business. And federal government says debt profile of the country can improve with collective efforts to advance revenues and, of course, end the subsidy regime, which may cost Nigerians over 6 trillion naira in 2023. Let's have all the details from Alika Apanachara.
This was disclosed at a consultative forum on Nigeria's medium-term expenditure plan. The Director General of the Debt Management Office, Patience Oniha, observed that Nigeria has one of the lowest revenue to GDP ratio in the world, hence inadequate to provide for infrastructure on the long run without borrowing.
Why is the debt stock growing? You can see it from the presentations that we've been having for several years. When the budget is drawn up, it is drawn up from the budget. There's revenue, there's expenditure, then there's a gap that is funded by borrowing. It doesn't just happen, accidentally or without any approvals. That's one. But having said that, what are we even doing to ensure that even if we have to borrow, the debt service cost can be moderated? Over 60% of our external debt is actually from concessional sources. So we're talking of costs below that are at most 3% and are spread out over a long period. If we didn't have those strategies in place, the debt service will actually be higher. Okay, so there's a lot going in terms of managing the debt service, managing the debt stock also in composition. So while people talk about debt stock is growing, A lot of it is actually long tenor, both the external and the domestic, and they are not all due now. We would like to see more revenue so that the debt service to revenue ratio is high.
And taking a look at Monday tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, Alika Wanachi, Arua.
Thank you very much, Alika, for the business news package on Good Morning Nigeria. Up next for us, newspaper review.
All right, Bayo Atewe is right here with us. Bayo, good morning. And I say good morning with big smiles.
Thank you. Good morning.
And I'm sure you know why.
I know,
yesterday,
because as an athlete, I'm sure you are elated to the sky for the performance of two of our compatriots.
Precisely. I've been watching the video of Toby.
Nigeria.
I'm sorry, Kingsley. I didn't allow him to.
What are you sorry for? I mean,
I didn't allow him to welcome you.
At the time we started Good Morning Nigeria yesterday, but we had not fully apprehended the story of what happened in Oregon with Nigerian track and field athletes. But near the end of the program, we had a story, but we also didn't have the visuals. And so Kieran and I signed off on the note of what had transpired. It's a big story, no question about that. I think we can even begin our newspaper review with that. We don't have it on the front pages of the paper today, but all through the alternative media, if you may, that's to say the new and social media, the stories are out there of what happened with regard to Toby Amuson, who has now set a world record in the 100 meters women's hurdles at the World Athletics Championships. And she's the first Nigerian to have won a gold medal at the World Athletics Championships, and also to be the holder of a world record in athletics. 12.12 seconds. Yes. Now, there's a subtext to that we will discuss. That's the needless grab by Michael Johnson.
And of course, let's not forget, we tend to do that. S.A. Bremer,
of course,
who also,
she was the first to have won bronze at the World Athletics in Doha, and she has now topped it up with silver. But the remarkable thing was what Oluwatobilola Amusa, when during the semi-finals, she broke the world record by returning 12.12. And in the finals, she returned an air-aided time of about 12.06.
12.06.
And because the time allowed by air-aided speed is about 2.5, and it was in excess of that, it was not recognized. But it's a world record. And
an African record as well.
Yes. And the interesting thing is that Michael Johnson was trying to disparage that record, but Usain Bolt came to say congratulations to Toby Lola.
Big time, big time. No, there's no question about that. There's no question about her superlative performance. I've watched that race over and over
again.
I mean, you have the clips circulating on the social media, and you could see the determination on her face. She's just 25 years old. And something else. Just before we get there, let's also point out that the 4x100 women, that's to say 4x100 relay for women, they also broke the record that was 30 years old, set by Mary Onyale, Utondu, and others at the Barcelona Olympics. They shaved off some time. They came fourth in Oregon, but it was a new African record that they set at the meet. So congratulations to them. That would seem to compensate for the other losses that we had endured in the 100 meters, the 200 meters, and elsewhere. But there's a lot of work to do. There's no question about a lot of work to do. What are the implications? My opinion as follows. Don't be surprised. Amuson now will be the toast of everyone
Certainly.
Oh, toast of everyone. She also won a jackpot prize of $100,000 US. Some persons will immediately multiply that by 600 and then say if she goes to Zone 4 here in the FCT, or if she goes to Murtala Mohammed Airport in Lagos, or Broad Street, or whatever, this is how much she would get. But you have to ask yourself, how did she get to where she is today?
Oh, in fact,
it's serious hard work.
It's many years of hard work. I can tell you.
And
sweat, yes, perseverance.
To the grinding stone. It's not easy for an athlete.
It's not.
And this is, now that she has successfully peaked there, and age is on her side, she's certainly going to go higher than that.
That's right. But here is the thing. If you also listen to the names of some of the athletes and their affiliation, some of them who took part in the Oregon Athletics Championships, some of them are university students.
Yes, most of them.
University students. So where are our university students?
Most of them are university studying abroad
in the days,
and also training.
Yes, in the days, Kingsley asked a very vital question.
Yes.
Well, the days I, did some running on the track, the university system made provision for athletes. So you had the times when you were free to go for your practice and to go for your trainings. And it was not counted for you. When you came back, you had made up lessons, made up tests and all that. But as time went on, that, was no longer there. And so, I mean, those of us who were academic inclined did not have the opportunity of continuing training or to take advantage of the times. So I think that was what happened. It eroded with time. So university students do no longer have that privilege of combining, academics, with athletics.
Yeah, but again, the corollary to that is that the school administrators and the lecturers must and should have the presence of mind to work out schedules of this nature. It is possible that somebody just said you want to go and do track. You're on your own. Go and do it. But you must. You understand what I mean by you. For you to say, look, all right, this student wasn't in class. How many of the athletes do we have? This is what we're going to do. We're going to arrange special classes for you, X, Y, Z. Well, now you can see how everything is upside down. It's the same thing with the academicals in those days.
Yes,
if you recall the Midwest academicals.
Academicals were the feed for the under 20 team until the under 17 was also introduced. The academicals used to be the feeder team, the feed for that under 20
if you look at what those of them who used to play football, for instance, Segun Odegbami rose from the Western academicals, and Segun Odegbami continues to be relevant to sports today in terms of suggestions. And I'm saying that because Segun Odegbami took it upon himself to ensure that Chioma Ajunwa was groomed for the long jump event at the Atlanta Olympics in 1996, where she won the first individual gold medal at the Olympics for Nigeria. So when you look at the entire system, what is it that we are doing and what is it that we can do?
Kingsley, like this cartoon at the back of what paper now, Al Jazeera says, it don't take when we hear better news like this. Anyway,
yeah, so, that's right. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Let's just take a look at other stories, of course, of grave importance. No election if insecurity persists, and that's attributed to Arawa youths. It's on Al Jazeera front page. It has a number of writers there. It says release of captives, liberation of communities, a must for voting. Calls for NSA's sacking. Says he has run out of ideas. Now, man seeks removal of 7.5% of VAT on diesel. Other stories, passengers stranded at airports as aviation fares scarcely bites harder. You have no going back on July 31 deadline, says INEC. That's as regards continuous voters register. Now, federal government orders closure of FGC, Federal Government College Kwali, beefs up security in Unity colleges. It's also there on page 11, but on the left-hand page there. Page 2 also, Osun Assembly begins power handover from APC to PDP, and Buhari appoints acting FRSC co-marshal is on page 2, of course, following the pulling out of Boboye Oyeyemi. And just a little below the nameplate, 24 hours after agonizing video, terrorists released 3 train attack victims. Okay, Kingsley.
That's right. Some of those stories you read, we'll also have them on the front page of the Punch newspaper. But let me take a few of the stories from the Punch. Above the nameplate says, wealthy Nigerians smuggling jet A1 to neighboring countries. And this is attributed to the Senate. Details on page 23, but actually it is Senator Smata Deyemi who is expressing his opinion. I've read the story and I don't find the evidence to back up the claim that whether Nigerians are smuggling jet A1 to neighboring countries. If they are doing so, how are they smuggling it? That's the key point to address. And how many aircraft are landing in those other countries, are operating in those other countries where the fuel has been smuggled to. 75% of houses in Nigeria are substandard. That's according to Vice President Yemi Osinbajo. 2 earpieces beside the Dane flag. Federal government shuts oil firm, alleges illegal offshore operations. Foreign education gulped $378 million in 5 months. That's according to the CBN. ASU strike, that's the kicker for the lead headline. NLC Solidarity Rally holds today. Police warn hoodlums. Police, NSCDC, that's civil defense personnel, to be deployed in critical infrastructure. Lagos Union directs electricity and aviation workers to join rallies. No going back on protests. And mega rally holds in Abuja Wednesday. That's according to the NLC. Now the photographs of the abductees, Kaduna abductees who were freed, you can see the photograph, the 3 of them there. And then the other 2 photographs are from the protests by family members of the abductees who are still in captivity. And the protest took place in Abuja yesterday. Very quickly, Amechi, that's Tinubu and Amechi's allies disagree over vote buying allegation. Amechi had said that there was see and buy of delegates during the APC presidential special convention that picked the presidential candidate of the party. Operators reject bill seeking ban on donkey slaughtering. Terrorists injure soldiers in Abuja. Government shuts school.
Bayo, just before we get to you, let's quickly take a look at leadership. So you just quickly wrap up all the review. Leadership newspaper has, of course, on its security story as its lead story. To avert security breach in Abuja, FG closes schools. Quite a number of riders. Beefs up security in Unity colleges nationwide. 3 soldiers wounded as military repels terrorist attack. All these stories we've read also trending on other papers. Now, NIMET raises alarm over impending flooding in Lagos, Ogun, and others. Also on the front page of Leadership, Okada ban will render 40 million Nigerians jobless, and that's according to the operators. And you also say Finance Minister, just a bit below the nameplate, Finance Minister briefs governors on state of the economy today. Finance Minister briefs governors on state of the economy today. And again, INEC is reminding prospective registrants that 6 days to the deadline, millions may miss registration. But INEC says no, the deadline will not shift. Now, just above the nameplate, PMB, that's President Muhammadu Buhari, appoints Bill as acting FRSA Corps Marshal. And NLC ignores pressure, begins 3-day nationwide protest today. Paya, over to you.
Thank you very much.
Let's correct that. Is it 3-day protest or 2-day protest?
Sorry, 2-day protest. No, yes, 3 days.
Leadership is reporting 3 days. But NLC says it's 2 days.
2 days.
So I think we have
barely 24 hours after the nation was outraged by the public flogging of train abductees, 3 of them have been released. It's 1 female and 2 other gentlemen. However, information in the Daily Trust indicated that the terrorists were outraged because some relatives who were taking ransom to secure the release of an ill abductee were stopped by the security, saying that it was illegal to pay ransom. And therefore, they were protesting. And some of them protested at the Federal Ministry of Transport yesterday, saying that if government was proactive, there would have been no need for people to pay ransom. However, the new Minister of Transportation, Sambo Muazu, promised that he is waiting to be briefed, and he took the contact address, telephone numbers, and promised to reach out to relatives of the captives. And he said, like the president directed, that they should get in touch with them. He promised to get in touch with them and take some proactive action to ensure that every single person who is in captivity will be safely returned to their family. Talking about education now, the Federal Ministry of Education has announced the closure of federal government colleges, especially in the Federal Capital Territory, and also advised a beefing up of security. This is not far-fetched because there was a security breach in Buhari area where there is a federal government girls' college in Buhari. Officers of Brigade of Guard came under attack, and they successfully repelled the attack from the terrorists. Also, from the Ministry of Education indicated that there were security breaches in Sheda as well as Lambata area covering Kwali Area Council, and there is a federal government college at Kwali, and that is why that school was also shut.
There was a circular, sorry, but there was a circular, well, I read it on social media, allegedly from the FCT Education Board, directing schools, you know, to end NECO or so, to vacate by Wednesday. And I'm wondering what is likely to happen to the ongoing NECO examinations.
Yes. In fact, the Ministry of Education has indicated that arrangements will be made for students who were doing their third term exam, as well as those who were sitting for the senior secondary school examination, the NECO examination, for them to complete the examination that had been abruptly disrupted. Don't forget that it's not the first time NECO has been disrupted. During the COVID, NECO and WAEC were disrupted, and they had to reschedule for some of them to be taken. But the most important thing is to make sure that at least the students were saved from this. Having said that,
I think, Bayo, perhaps it's useful to contextualize the directive to close some of the federal government colleges in the Federal Capital Territory.
Yes.
Of course, the Federal Capital Territory has 6 area councils. Those area councils are the equivalent of local government councils. Some of them are quite remote from AMAC, which is the Abuja Municipal Area, which is the central area. Kwali, that you mentioned, for instance, is right on the way to Lokoja, and it's far off. And it's not unlikely that the authorities are acting on credible intelligence in the first instance, and the fact that perhaps it is much better to take this step now of closing those schools. Because if you recall, in 2014, the abduction of the Chibok girls was preceded by a letter that was written by the then Honorable Minister of State for Education, that Nyesom Wike, who is the governor of Rivers, directing the closure of schools in unsafe locations in Borno State, for instance, and the relocation of the students from those schools who were writing their WAEC exams to safer locations. Now, of course, there's back and forth as to whether the letter was received or whether it was complied with, or if it was complied with, the extent of the compliance, and so on and so forth. I think that's the reason that one can understand what is being said now with regard to that. Yesterday, we read it in the papers that some of the students in one of the federal government colleges in the FCT were being stampeded through the exams, 4 papers in a day. That was excessive. I mean, you could write the exams in some other locations.
But it's not far-fetched. I mean, Kuje prison was attacked just some couple of weeks ago, and if you look at the location of Kuje, as the crow flies, is almost diametrically just almost the southeast of Kwali local government area, where the federal government college is located. So, and if you look at Kuje itself, there has been instances of abduction and attack and kidnapping in that location. So that area is high security, posing real security challenges.
And some of the escapees from the Kuje jail break and invasion are still on the loose.
Yes.
But asking, directing for the closure of the schools, is that the option? Is that the solution?
You might see it as a knee-jerk reaction, but to protect the student, that is the safest thing to do.
at the moment.
Yes, at the moment, yes. It's not a total solution.
Yes.
At the moment, but what then should happen is, for those who are writing their exams, they should be relocated to other schools, maybe the city center, where they can write their exams. You then ask yourself, okay, where will the students be quartered? Because probably the students who are in boarding school, they come from different locations, and so on and so forth. But I think that these are issues that the school administrators should worry about, Claire. Because the alternative would be, okay, you allow them, I mean, let's not get into details of discussion so that others who have other intentions don't take advantage of it.
An Okada rider was
less than 15 seconds.
Okay, an Okada rider
15 seconds, Abuja would have broken the world record.
It's a long time. An Okada rider gave information when he saw fire at a market in Ilorin, and that helped the fire brigade. They were able to save 86 shops. Unfortunately, only 11 shops got burned, and property about 9.6 million were lost.
Well,
the Okada rider, 5 a.m. going, he saw it and quickly went to the fire brigade and raised the alarm.
They still need to up their games in terms of, you know, the way they operate.
Yes.
But I mean, good for this young Okada man.
Yes, but
yes,
invariably they said that the fire apparently was caused by electric power surge.
Mr. Bayo Tayobi, time to let you go. Thank you. I'll see you. Me and you will see you on Friday.
Friday. May God spare our life to beyond Friday.
Amen. All right then. This is Good Morning Nigeria. Don't go away. We'll be right back to talk about the other alternatives to protest that the NLC has embarked upon in solidarity with the Academic Staff Union of Universities. In a moment. All right, welcome back. And if you've just joined us, you're quite on time for our conversation. Now, it's over 5 months since the Academic Staff Union of Universities began their strike action, and it appears that the end is not yet in sight. It is in this regard that the Nigerian Labour Congress, the NLC, has organized a nationwide protest to push for what it says will be quick settlement of the dispute. In our background report, Yemi Ajayi chronicles efforts thus far to resolve the industrial action. Let's take a listen to it.
February 14, 2022 was unpleasant, as this was when the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, commenced an indefinite strike, suspending academic activities nationwide. It was a Black Day Valentine for students.
In fact, Nigerian University has been considered one of the universities that you graduate in 8 years because of strike. This strike is not only today. He has been linking over years in the past administration.
But you are at home, they are not doing anything. They are trying to engage themselves in doing certain manual jobs because they want to keep themselves busy.
They say we are the leaders of tomorrow, and this is what we get. It was difficult for I would say majority of all of us to get admission into university. Now this is what is happening.
An average Nigerian writes like 2-3 jams just to get admission, and then you get the admission, you can't even graduate.
Many thought the industrial action would only last for a short period of time, but this was not to be. ASU had expressed grievances over the failure of the federal government to fulfill some of the agreements reached as far back as 2009. It also demanded the funding for revitalization of public universities and academic allowances, university transparency accountability solution, promotion arrears, renegotiation of 2009 ASU Federal Government of Nigeria agreement, and the inconsistencies in the Integrated Payroll and Personal Information System IPPIS. They have also demanded improved welfare packages and better working conditions. For more than 5 months now, federal and state tertiary institutions have remained shut without academic activities. No doubt, efforts have been made with meetings organized between both sides to end the industrial action, but little or no fruitful agreements were reached. The Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari, visibly concerned about the prolonged strike, charged ASU to reconsider their actions and return back to school. In solidarity, the Nigerian Labour Congress has urged the federal government to negotiate in good faith to resolve the ongoing public university strike and not keep the unions in the dark concerning the Professor Nimi Briggs recommendation. It also threatened to commence a 2-day protest to drive home the point on the importance of both parties reaching a compromise in the interest of the Nigerian students.
All right, thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background up. Joining us to discuss issues around the ASU strike and the planned 2-day protest by the NLC. Let's welcome via Zoom Dr. Mukhtar Imam. Dr. Mukhtar Imam is Dean, Faculty of Management, Communications and Social Sciences at Penn Resource University in Gombe. Dr. Imam, we're glad to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
All right. Also joining us for this conversation, a peace advocate and educationist, Dr. Philip Hayab. Dr. Hayab, here in the Abuja studios, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. And then also joining us via Zoom, this time from Ilorin, that's the Kwara State capital. We'd like to welcome Comrade Issa Aremu, who is Director General of the Michael Imodu National Institute for Labor Studies based in Ilorin. Comrade Issa Aremu, we're glad to have you this morning.
It's a pleasure to have me, Kisley. Greetings to everybody. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right. Well, gentlemen, once again, we welcome you to the program. The subject matter is one that is staring all of us in the face, namely the planned protest by the NLC as a pressure point on the government to wrap up its negotiations with ASU so that the 5-month-long industrial action can be called off. But let's begin with Comrade Issa Aremu. Look, some persons would obviously argue that this yin and yang over industrial action, call-off, suspension, it's one that it's been routinized in our country for some decades now. And why does it appear always intractable? Not even appear. Why is it always intractable to resolve these issues and then proceed therefrom? Comrade Issa Aremu.
Well, once again, Kingsley, let me extend special greetings to you, my sister Claire, and our listeners. Special greetings from Ilorin. Well, I think it's, as you said, from your remark, as well as from the background report you gave, it is clear that increasingly the crisis in education and research institutions is seemingly getting protracted. But if you ask me point blank, I would say the problems are not insurmountable. They can be resolved. The first thing is for all the stakeholders in this dispute, namely sector unions, the government, students. I think there's noise in the background. There's a noise in the background. I guess it's.
Hear you.
Yeah, but I'm being disturbed in the noise in the background. Okay,
Maybe
you're hearing me now.
Yeah, that's some distortion. We're hearing you loud and clear.
Excellent. So what I'm trying to say is that from your background narrative, I think it's important for all the stakeholders to know that we're having a legacy problem in our hand. This is not the first time that ASU will be on this strike. This is just the latest one. In fact, as at the last count from our findings at the Institute, there have been sector union strikes with respect to ASU in particular since 1899, almost 16 times. And if you go back even before 1999, as far back as 1988, ASU had been in this struggle of strike to press home its demand for improvement in the education sector. So what I want to say here is that if all the stakeholders know that this is a legacy problem, then that gives us time for sober reflection that what have we been doing, the same method, the same approach to the same crisis, and we are getting similarly the same results. If you ask me, it has been summer motions without movement. So that's the first point. Then the second one is that whatever your sense of judgment, I'm caught in between the stakeholders. First, I'm the DG of Michael Imodu Labour Institute. Of course, you also know my background. But what I want to get clear is that both Labour, now visibly being represented by Nigerian Labour Congress, the government represented by Education Ministry, Federal Ministry of Labour, that has been commendably intervening to see how to resolve this crisis, students inclusive. It is clear that all the stakeholders are concerned about the need for us to have sustainable, uninterrupted academic calendar, first in our universities, as well as in all the research institutions. I'm emphasizing research institutions because, Kingsley, it will interest you that me, technically, notionally, even my institute was right, because close to 67 research institutions nationwide, they have been on strike over the same issues. 2009 agreement has not been obeyed. So you have the non-academic staff, So it's not just ASU. You have Senior Staff Association, SATRI, they have also been on strike. All I want to say here is that all of them are passionate about the need for us to fix the education sector. Now, what should be the way out? I think that's why I want to commend NTA for today, for us to discuss this issue. And it's taking place at a time, from what I've read from your report, Nigerian Labour Congress is voted in to give solidarity action. And again, I'm not surprised about the NSC action because NSC is a labor center, and ASU, NASU, all the other sector, that are strike, they are all affiliates of Nigerian Labour Congress. And you know that NSC thrives, or labor thrives, on solidarity action, which is fine. But I also know, given the privileged position I occupy now, that just like labor is concerned about the need to resolve these problems, so also government are also concerned. Last week, the Federal Ministry of Labour summoned a meeting of top management, which included the CEO of all the MBAs within the ministry, the director in the ministry, and top on the agenda included the dispute going on in the labor sector, and the Honorable Minister, Dr. Chris Ngige, as well as the Minister of State for Labor, Mr. Festus Keyamo, and they are all passionate about the need to resolve this crisis. So, of course, the presidency, you also had the lamentation of the president during Salah to say that it's time that we put an end to the strike, enough is enough, and that there should be consideration for the plight of the students. So if we all realize that we are concerned, I think this realization should guide the approach of all the actors to see the way out of this crisis. And for me, it's crisis of collective bargaining. Nigeria has very vibrant institutions for, conflict resolution in the world of work. I think we need to take advantage of that. And this way, I want to encourage Nigerian Labour Congress to bring its experience. It's good that NSC is demonstrating concern through the solidarity action. In any case, it's legitimate to do so. But beyond that, what we want is resolution of the problem. And I think NSC is tested in this respect to guide the athletes very well and also relate to the government, especially the Ministry of Education, because Ministry of Labor is actually a mediator in this case. It is the sector union that will have to engage with the sector ministry. And I want to give you a practical example before I wrap up this my introductory remark. I mean, in this dispensation, and also in the past, even when I was there, NSA has done very well to get concessions for Nigerian workers. The current one is the struggle for national minimum wage. I can't remember throughout that struggle, maybe 1 or 2 days, NSC showed the need to engage in protests, to make the point, but not protracted strike the way we have it. But NSC has signed this minimum wage, which is the fourth that we have signed in this dispensation. Now, what method is NSC using that we are getting results without necessarily a protracted strike, 5 months, 16 times strike? In fact, the last calculation is close to about 52 months that we have lost to strike in the case of education sector. So how we enjoy the NSC beyond the protest to bring that skill of the need for proper return to collective bargaining process, and it must start with simple approach that all the actors are doing the same thing. They were all interested to make the education sector to work. We're celebrating this new world champion, this wonderful lady, what's her name now, Toby. I'm Muslim, beyond the fact that she did very well on the track. Don't forget that she's also a student, University of Texas, United States. I mean, if that university have shut down, the way our university are shut down, I think she may possibly be on the street, out of school student. But she combined athletic fit and performance with academic excellence, because the university where she is running. So I think all of us should be tempered with this fact. And if we do so, then we must respect collective agreement, which has been entered into. And we must be able to do to do compromise. I think all the parties have to shift. I know when NSC was asking for the new minimum wage, our demand that time was almost about 96 naira per month. But through negotiation, we ended up, to get 30,000. It's about compromises. I think the same thing should apply to the sector unions, that you don't necessarily get what you want, but you must be able to go with compromise. Then government too must be able to also see the need to continue the negotiation, because that's the way out. The only way to resolve the problem in the world of work is social dialogue, negotiation. And that means government must also come in to address those key issues that have been on the table. And I think the major one is crisis of compensation for the lecturers. I mean, I've said so, it's unacceptable. You can't motivate intellectuals, the lecturers in this sector without paying them very well. So there should be offer on the table. And when you are doing so, don't operate under duress. Why government may be willing to give an offer, then ASU or the sector union must also possibly suspend the action, why negotiation continues. So what I want to say is that I've no doubt in my mind that we can resolve these problems. They seem seemingly intractable, but they are surmountable. Only that we need a new approach, new methods, so that we can get new results. Thank you very much.
Comrade Issa Aremu, I'd like to appreciate the points that you have raised, and of course to welcome you, to say that you used to be an astute comrade, but I want to believe that your being director has given you deeper insight into the workings of government. We'll return to you, to get more insight into how we can resolve this looming strike by ASU and, of course, the protest by NLC. But I'd like to take Dr. Philip Hayab, who is a peace advocate and educationist. If we look at how the parties involved, and the strategies that they have applied in resolving this issue, how would you evaluate it?
Okay, now this is maybe I would say now I'm in a difficult situation. I used to be a lecturer until in January that I joined government service. And as a student, I was very close to the activities of ASU. So I would say that I have an idea as to how these negotiations have always been. We have to give credit to ASU as one of the most organized unions, at least maybe in Africa. They take decisions from the chapter level before it gets to NEC. And then they are slow, they give maybe a warning strike, maybe 2-3 days before they would declare a full indefinite strike. It's unfortunate that we have had these strikes ongoing, non-stop. For instance, when I was an undergraduate student, there was a time in one single level, as we call it in Nigeria, I think we spent 18 months instead of 10 months. But then when you take, maybe you compare Nigerian universities, maybe with universities, let's say in Ghana, let's say in Kenya, let's say in South Africa, it will now give you insight as to why Nigerian university lecturers would embark on strike, particularly asking government to honor its agreement in terms of upgrading the standard of education, funding these universities without allowing the universities to go cap in hand. So we'll give credit to ASU, and well, the federal government has been engaging ASU from what we hear on and watch on, maybe read on in the media. But I think the concessions that the government is supposed to have done is what the government, to my mind, has not done. There is no country that will expect its education system to move that will allow a strike to linger for up to 5 months. I think if you have any issues with the labor unions, particularly lecturers at the citadel of learning like a university, it will be expected that it should be a matter of 2 to 3 days and then some concessions. Now, if there had been concessions and genuine concessions on the side of the government, I like to believe.
There have been.
Yes, I like to believe that.
Concessions.
Yes, now the problem is that this very government, maybe if you give credit, but I mean over the years. Now, because what I do know is that in the past, the issue of funding, issue of, yes, and in terms of structure, improving on the structures of universities and all that, was something that was topical around the 2000s. I attended Abuja and I left in 2005. When I go back to the department, it doesn't look like the university that has received funds, and if they have received funds and then there has not been, these funds have not been put into use, then maybe it will be the government should have a machinery to checkmate this university to ensuring that whatever funds that are available for them have been judiciously used. So in a way, yes, maybe because of the lingering situation, like the first speaker was talking about, if you look at strike from 1988. Now, why were there no strikes before 1988 or maybe in this length? It means that at that time, government was up and doing in terms of providing funding and all the resources that were needed at the universities. Now, I read this morning, one of the issues ASU was raising, the proliferation of universities. Now, if there are concessions, why do we proliferate universities? You have university here and there. Some of the universities are just glorified secondary schools, if you see them. Now, so that is one aspect. For instance, in Ghana, our neighboring country here, all the universities that began maybe 10 years ago, they are still university colleges. They've not received full-fledged accreditation to become full-fledged universities. So they rely on the universities that have a long standing in order to operate. And many Nigerians go there just to go to a university college. Now, but when we start up a university in Nigeria, the next thing, maybe 1 to 3 years, the university is already a full-fledged university. And so they rely on bringing in people from elsewhere and all that. So I do believe that the government might have done well, but not done, to my mind, my expectations, particularly that the people who are in, that is the Minister of Education, the Minister for State for Education. Now, these are academics in their own right because they all have had studied to the level that they have reached. Now, so if they are making concessions, they make concessions that, to my mind, will maybe, let's say 70%, or let's say 60% or 55%, I do believe that ASU might not have the grounds to continue to say, let's continue the strike, remembering that the bulk of students are at home. Right now, we have 3 sets of students who are waiting to be admitted to the university. Now, how can we solve this kind of problems? How do we guarantee peace in our country when you have students staying at home for 5 months? Some are likely not going to come back alive, and that is a big issue.
Dr. Philip Hayab, thank you very much for the points that you have raised. Before we bring in Dr. Mukhtar Imam, Dr. Mukhtar Imam, of course, used to be at Bayes University here in Abuja, and a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. I was just wondering, I think it's important to correct the notion, because I think it was in the newspaper review segment we had it last week or the week before, when one paper in its infographics illustrating the number of times ASU had been on strike reported that ASU's first strike was in 1988. And I did say during the newspaper review section that figure is that date is not correct. ASU had its first strike in 1981. I was a student at the time. 1981. That was the year Nigeria also had its first national minimum wage under Alhaji Shehu Shagari as president of the Federal Republic. So ASU's first strike was in 1981, not 1988. But we'll get back to the substance of other issues that have been raised. You mentioned ABU, for instance, that you go back, you're not seeing evidence of movement. But TED Fund would point to a number of projects that have been executed, not just at ABU, but elsewhere in other universities, public universities, federal and state. Central Bank of Nigeria also had a mega project at Ahmadu Bello University. I think I saw that sometime in 2012 or in 2013, a mega project by the CBN. And if you recall, Sanusi then was the CBN governor. And at some point, certain persons were asking him what criteria the CBN was using for the choice and location of university projects that were being cited. But again, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of some of those aspects. Dr. Mukhtar Imam, let's bring you into the conversation right now. I mean, you were in the private university, and you've apprehended this industrial action. At some point, were also affected, of course, in much earlier years, not in your private institution, by the way. But what do you make of all of this and the pressure point that the NLC is now opening up by staging a 2-day protest?
Thank you very much, Chief Kingsley. I did not get some part of the question, but yes, you're my high chief. You cannot deny that. The issue about the lingering ASU strike is one like my former comrade, Oga Issa. Oga Issa is smiling. Oga is still a comrade. Well, these issues have lingered on for a while. They have been okay. I'll take you up on that offline, sir. First and foremost, I think it is important very keenly to state that there is no doubt, and it is indisputable, that funding for education in general in this country is low, critically low, and there's the need to up the figures in terms of statutory funding in appropriation in budgeting for education, for the educational sector in the country. There is no dispute about that. The last count showed that it stood at around 13% of the entire budgeting, which is not in itself something viable for a country of 200 million population and a country that aspires to be the largest or one of those countries that lifts its population out of ignorance and whatnot. The federal government talked about its projected plans to take 100 million Nigerians out of the uneducated brackets. So there is no doubt about that. But the question about ASU is, you see, the issues are as complex as they are protracted. The demands of ASU, let's start from there, have changed over the years. Like Oga Issa rightly mentioned, ASU has been on strike over 16 times in the course of our return to the democratic dispensation. Let's not even go to the 1988 or 1981 question. In the last 2 or less than 2 decades, ASU has been on strike for over 16 times. And in one of these cases, we saw that ASU was on strike for a period of, you could merge them together to be a period of close to a year, if not more. I think it will be unwise to continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect the same result. In this context, while there is enough blame to go around to all of the stakeholders, speaking to the government and of course the academic bodies, there is the need to critically dissect these issues individually and then of course look at them collectively. The demands of ASU over the years has been about funding for lecturers, which is of course is at its abysmal low. That demand is cogent, it is genuine. Lecturers need to be compensated more, there is no doubt about that. And this cuts across both public and private sectors. I'm talking about both public and private universities. There's a need to up the pay. Remuneration for lecturers are quite low, or is quite low. But beyond that, you see, there's the need for ASU to also have deep reflections and introspect. What I mean by that is there's the need to hold university authorities to account as well. ASU is an academic body of teaching individuals whose responsibility is basically tied to the classroom. There are administrators who manage the funding of universities. Now, if we're going to go into the bits of funding that come into the universities, from tuitions to central bank intervention, one of which you talked about yourself, Chief Kingsley, to allowances and all kinds of funding, NFR funding that comes from TED Fund, to need assessment funding that comes from TED Fund, to subvention that comes from the federal government, and so on and so forth. Now, if we begin to look at all of these things collectively and say, let's hold the university to account, let's have an internal audit in the last decade alone of how these monies have been spent and in what they have been spent on, or on what they have been spent on, I think we will have a lot of questions left unanswered. I'm saying this without fear of contradiction because the figures are alarming. Just to take a bit from what has happened in recent history, the end allowance that ASU continued to fight, that was part of it was paid for, close to about 30 billion. You go around universities today, you will find that there is still lingering crisis between senior academic staffs and junior academic staffs, and of course non-academic staff, some of whom have not gotten paid yet. So these are some of the things that ASU needs to also critically look at within the university in itself. Now, we are at a time in our evolution as humans where all over the world, universities are not solely dependent on government fundings. Yale University, for example, last year, erecting an IGR collectively from alumni funding to research institute funding and so on and so forth of about a bit short than $9 billion US. That's a university, that's an institution of higher learning as well. So I think these are opportunities that are also available for the university to explore. But again, it boils down to the other question of accountability, of responsiveness on the part of the administrators. So I think that needs to be looked at, trashed out, and dealt with first and foremost before we even come to the current.
Oh dear. Dr. Mukhtar Imam, Dean of Faculty of Management, Communications and Social Studies, Social Sciences, speaking to us via Zoom. I do hope we will re-establish contact with him, and when we do that, we'll return to him to conclude his thoughts on that. But let's again go back to Comrade Issa Aremu. If his connection is okay, all right, we'll get back to Dr. Philip Hayab. As soon as we are able to reconnect with our Zoom, we will get back to those our guests. So, Dr. Hayab, you listened to the Imam Mukhtar and all that he said, and I was trying to actually get figures because I know that the federal government had made some releases, and the last one I got here, if I'm correct, was in 2021, and that was about more than 50 billion naira released to ASU. But the current issue is on agreement on the renegotiated, agreement, and of course the issue with the payment model, which ASU is insisting that the federal government must implement. And the federal government has said, look, with the payment model, we are still on it, and of course the BRICS committee, which is still being debated and all that. So is this protest the best way to resolve the matter on ground?
No, the answer would be no, definitely. The point I was raising doesn't in any way support that strike should continue.
Protest.
Yeah,
Protest.
the protest by the end of planned protest. I think the planned protest by the NSC is just a way of maybe drive home a point to say, okay, ASU is not alone on this. This is where the matter is. Like the comrade was talking about our institute, that is Institute for Peace, where we're supposed to have peace. Our non-academic staff too are making some demands. So yeah, some of these protests, unfortunately, particularly in the dispensation where we are now, which is a political dispensation, could be misinterpreted. And if you ask me, they are not the best ways to resolving the crisis that is the lingering strike. What I will expect is that maybe the pressure should be able to make government to listen more, and then maybe move more to give more concessions so that we can have this students go back to school. I think last week I had one of the ministers was saying ASU was not part of NLC, which is not the case. These are issues that the government should be clear about. Definitely NLC is the, let's say, general mother body for all the other labor unions, and definitely seeing that this strike has lingered for 5 months without a solution. I think NLC is just coming to say that we are supporting the strike, or maybe the content of the strike. Now, if this demand can push the government to listen more and then come to a reasonable conclusion, this matter between ASU and the federal government, I think for me that would be a good thing. But I don't expect that we have a total shutdown. If we have a total shutdown, there's already shutdowns at the universities. People who have shops at these universities no longer have anything to maybe their businesses have been closed. Certain students had, maybe most of the students, if not all, paid their, some of them who live off campus paid money for accommodation. They cannot get these monies back. So a lot of losses has already been incurred. We cannot continue to increase the losses that our citizens have incurred as a result of this prolonged strike.
Well, Dr. Philip, while we're trying to get the other guests back via Zoom, Mukhtar popped up a moment ago. But I think his Zoom connection to us is still freezing. Tell us something about the decision making in ASU, because I mean, ASU has genuine causes that it has pursued over the years, and as you guests have mentioned this morning, as we have also known over the years, the nature of the demands by ASU, that nature has been changing. Because as one issue is resolved, you come on to another kind of issue, which some persons would argue it's good. I mean, we talk funding of tertiary institutions, for instance. It was on account of ASU that the Babangida administration brought in the 2% tax on company profits. And on and on, we have seen those incremental improvements. But when you speak to a number of professors in the universities and even university managers, they are dead against the approaches by ASU. And as Comrade Aremu pointed out, it now appears that, same approach, same method, and expecting a different result. But unfortunately, what we are getting is the same result. So when you talk about decision making, it appears that from the views, I've not done an extensive research so that somebody would not say what was the sampling size and so on and so forth. But I tell you, when you speak to professors and have conversations with them, it's as if, oh, the unionists are on their own, and so they are blackmailing everybody to get on with it, because there are a number of distinguished academics who are quite concerned about the reputational harm that these incessant industrial strikes are bringing on the Nigerian university system. What is your thought on this?
Yes, first, I think it's a matter of suspicion. That is suspicion, or maybe a sort of a suspicion. Now, as an academic, you spend so many years to go to the university, study, and then earn a master's or a PhD and get to work as a university lecturer. Now, the pay package, I think, and working conditions of Nigerian academics, to some extent, I think is the push, unfortunately. Because when they compare themselves with their counterparts in other parts of the world, there's seemingly a huge gap. And then, I mean, from my experience, then you see maybe someone who hardly has a certificate overnight gets an elective post, either as a councillor or a chairman, driving in a big car that with all your years spent studying, you might not be able to attain. I think that is where the root of the matter comes in. But I would say, and then the workings of ASU, definitely decisions are taken from the local chapters, and then it gets to NEC, and then NEC will now maybe come back to them with a decision. Now, from what I know, like you rightly said about TED Fund, yes, TED Fund, since TED Fund stepped in, so many things have happened. But what I can tell you is that if you go to any of the libraries, in Nigerian university libraries, you'll be shocked from what you knew at the time that you were a student. Now, so these are some of the issues that have not actually been done properly. And like the last speaker was talking about, forcing the university management to be accountable, I think is a very great point that I found. And ASU should refocus on this matter instead of just pointing an accusing finger at the federal government or the state government. I think ASU should be able to look inward, to look at how these vice chancellors, who are supposed to be academics, have overnight become stupendously rich. Now, where did they get the money? So what we are accusing the politicians sometimes, we end up becoming when we get the opportunity. So I think the working of ASU, just looking at federal government's role, it is high time that they started to look at their own universities and the structures and where the leakages that are happening. Like you talked about alumni fees. I've been paying my alumni fees as far as I can remember. If you go to take your certificate or take anything from the university, either a transcript, you pay money. Now, where is this money being channeled to? Some of these monies could be used to renovate the classes. They could be used to renovate buildings and even stock maybe the libraries with books. So I think it is not going to be fair to just look at what the federal government was not doing well or the government was not doing enough, but we should look at what the universities themselves are doing with the resources that trickle into their purses. Have they been accountable or not? If they are not accountable, ASU should be able to force the management of their universities to rise up to the challenge.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hayab. Let's, before we take a short break, I think we need to bring in Imam Mukhtar, if we have him on Zoom. Imam Mukhtar, while you conclude your thoughts earlier on, I'd like you to also speak on the current issue, which centers around the MDAs of the conciliators being pressured out of the meeting room during the Professor Nimi Briggs committee meeting, and of course the issue of the IPPIS and the UTAS. The professors are insisting that government should use the UTAS payment model. Well, government on its part, wants that model to be certified and ensure that it is foolproof. In the meantime, the IPPIS has been provided as an option. On the surface, these two issues, seem to be something easy to resolve. So why is it leading us to a protest?
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you very much. You're absolutely correct. First and foremost, I think sending the individuals representing these various MDs out of the meeting was quite unprofessional. That's my take. I wouldn't understand the entire circumstances surrounding what happened in that room. I wasn't there. But I think these are stakeholders as well, in as much as, or as far as our educational system in this country is concerned. These are people who, in one way or another, have a stake in anything that has to do with education in the country. So I think they will have the bit to contribute. The one thing that we fail to, and we consistently do, which has led us to erroneously progress in the wrong direction, is the fact that we always assume that the solution is in one individual or one set of group or one ministry and whatnot. It is not done that way. And as a matter of fact, this is one thing that has permeated society so much. And that's the reason why you find that our universities are hell-bent on government funding alone when there is the alternative of the private-public partnership. PPPs are going on all around the world, and it is something that can be explored. University of Abuja starts from Airport Junction up till Babwalada. What will the university use all that land for? Bring in people, give them that land, set up communities, and go into PPPs and see how you realize a lot of funds that will aid in sustaining the universities. But that's by the way. The other issue of youth as an IPPIS, I think you see, like you rightly mentioned, it is commonsensical. This is something that requires all of the individuals in government today have to go through institutions of learning or institutions of higher learning. And the people who have set up the IPPIS platform are people who are professionals in their own rights. And they are saying that this is something that should benefit the state. We should have a single treasury account. We should have a way of coordinating payments to everybody who is in the payroll of the federal government and whatnot. And ASU is saying we have an alternative. All good and fine. Bring in specialists from both sides, technocrats from both sides to sit down and iron out these issues. This is something about artificial intelligence. It's not even a human intelligence issue where you say it is complex and it cannot be resolved. Because if you want to unresolve issues, you put two human beings, particularly social scientists, in a room. Then you will see how you can unresolve issues. But this is something that is straightforward. It's about algorithms, it's about computers and whatnot. It can be brought to bear. You just sit, the technocrats on both parts will sit down, iron out the issues, and you will find a way out of it. Because again, like I said, if it's about blames going around, there's enough to go around. On the part of government, we see the lackadaisical attitude. On the part of ASU and academic teachers, we see what is going on. One professor like Kingsley was trying to mention earlier, we see one professor teaching in 4, 5, 6 universities. No offense to my professors and my colleagues in the academia, but this is the reality of what is going on. And then these people are trying to cover their track, and you find that, or their track, and you find that input becomes low. This is something that we also need to reflect on. That's why I talked about deep reflections earlier. In the words of Paulo Ferrari in his book, The Pedagogue of the Oppressed, he said, while trying to fight the oppressors, you must also take caution so that you do not become an oppressor yourself. This is about our children. This is about whether your children, your cousins, your nephews, and whatnot. So I think there are certain grounds that can be, compromised on the part of both the federal government and on ASU's side to be able to find a resolution speedily. And the reality of the whole situation is, I think ASU is not being tactful. Because to achieve results, you must be tactful in action and strategic in thinking. ASU cannot consistently go on strike to evoke public sympathy and at the same time countering those things. Because the timing is very crucial as well. The time ASU constantly goes on strike is counterproductive to what it is trying to achieve. ASU went on strike when COVID was at its height, when universities all around the world were trying to seek for solutions to the problem of COVID. And our institutions were closed. They were moribund, and this shouldn't be the case. Now ASU is going on strike when we know clearly well that whatever comes out of the mouth of this government today, as we have seen in the past, is going to be for political expediency. We have an election next year. So definitely anything you hear from the mouth of a government today, a former minister or a current minister once said this, that the 2008-2009 agreement was reached based on political expediency. And this is the same timing that we're looking at. You cannot go on strike at this time and expect any meaningful result. And about protest, I think it is unwise, it is unsafe, it is unruly. I think it will be one of the biggest mistakes that we'll be making at a time where the country is this fragile, with all of the security lapses that we're currently faced with in the country. You will find that there are numerous anomic groups that are waiting patiently for this protest to start. They will infiltrate this group, and only God knows where this is going to lead us. We must be very careful when taking certain decisions, like Kingsley rightly said earlier. Decision making and timing of these decisions are also very crucial as well, because when it happens, God forbid, the country will not explode, it will implode, and we will have nowhere to hide, God forbid. But we need to take drastic measures.
All right, Dr. Mukhtar Imam, thank you very much. Comrade Issa Aremu, still with us also via Zoom from Ilorin. Thanks a lot. Dr. Philip Hayab here in the Abuja studios. Thanks. In the meantime, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation. All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Of course, we know that the issues in the lingering ASU strike, by the time you begin to unpack them, you'll begin to also find a parallel equivalent in the demands of some of the other unions, SANU and NOAT. For instance, Claire, we're talking about IPPIS and UTAS. The non-academic staff, they have also configured their own payment platforms, and they're saying that that's the way to go. So how many of these issues is government going to be able to resolve? We have seen a number of these issues come up. But there's one point that I would like Comrade Issa Aremu to speak to. Because again, from the point of law and even the point of just pure governance, we have had very little from state governments and state governors on the current ASU strike. In the meantime, a number of state universities are also closed because their academic staff say they are in solidarity with the national ASU. And when you look at the slate of issues that the national ASU is pursuing with the federal government, the resolution of those issues will not directly affect state-owned universities. I mean, are the state universities also quarreling over IPPIS or UTAS, for instance? Is the federal government also owing them end allowance? So you then ask yourself, are the state university lecturers also employees by indirection of the federal government? Why do we have this whole issue of a shutdown of public universities, that's federal and state, on the basis of sympathy, even though earlier, Comrade Issa Aremu, you did say that sympathy is the lifeblood of trade unionism. But how can we go like this? I mean, so that state governors, state governments are themselves virtually helpless now. Some state universities are running, by the way, but you have the Nasarawa nearby us here is on part of the strike, and the staff are justifying it. Why is this going on? If I don't have an issue with you, then why should you lay down your tools?
Well, thank you so much, Kingsley. I think my other colleagues, they've said it all, and listening to Mukhtar, Dr. Mukhtar himself is an academician. I mean, expressing his frustration about the same method leading to the same result on the part of ASU. I think that says it all, because I mean, our institute will have the mandate to promote knowledge about labor market issues, how to resolve disputes, adult grievances between employers, in this case, government, and workers, in this case, the academic staff union, as well as the other education and research sector unions who are on strike. But the only thing that will help us out are the facts. And as you said, you also refer to the legal framework. But the fact that we are discussing, I mean, we are agonizing about the strike, about protests, you know, I mean, with that series of protests, so this one only increases the noise level of protests. the fact that that's what we're discussing, rather than the real issues, that tells you the limit of endless one method, the strike method, the protest method, to resolve problems that require more sustained negotiation and high level of compromises. And it's not because I'm a DG now, I've always been expressing that, even though I was a labor movement, that we need to have multiple strategies to pursue our goal. I mean, I was, for a long time, the General Secretary of National Union of Textile and Garment Workers of Nigeria. In fact, I took over from Comrade Adams Shomole. He was the, our General Secretary, a fantastic unionist. But you find out that in that sector, I mean, this private sector, when textile was highly labor intensive, the nature of work is that conflicts were inevitable. And when our workers really look for their right, they assert this right in a different way. But we've been able to put up a collective bargaining machinery in that sector in a way that throughout the period Comrade Adams was there, including when I was there, and I'm very sure they sustained the legacy. Today, we've signed close to 45 national agreements almost every year in the past 35 years without single shutdown of the entire industry as a whole. And of course, Phillips, is good for you to also appreciate this, that there are two kinds of disputes. I think we keep on saying so. Kingsley, you remember, we talk of dispute of right, dispute of interest. The textile industry, let me use that as an example. I've been facing perennial problem of smuggling, lack of electricity. Those are sort of factors, lack of funding that grounded the industry. But we use different approach to pursue that. Because dispute of rights, as long as your salaries are being paid as a when due, those are your fundamental rights. Now, dispute of interest, you want to new changes to improve on the sector. In the case of textile, more stop smuggling, encourage government patronage. You need a different approach. You need advocacy. You need to pressurize the stakeholders. And in a democracy, the same method you used in 1988, you can't use it in a democratic setting, because here the space is open. You can lobby, you can convince, even funding is about public appropriation, so that people get used to know your approach. So what I'm saying here is that if you ask me, this again, we can debate it, and I'm open to that discussion, is that, if you have problem with your payment system, IPPS or UTAS, can you legitimately go on an endless strike on that one? Because that's dispute of interest. Now, your problem with your pay that is not regular, if they don't pay you as a when due, it's a different approach that you need to have. And as Kingsley put it, there was a UTAS applied to state universities, now, even if you have to do solidarity, which I'm for it, that's our slogan, solidarity forever, it has to be based on things that you can really push appropriately. So all what I'm saying, Kingsley, is that I think if the method becomes the issue, there's a crisis rather than the issues. And that means that increasingly we need to look at a different approach that we can resolve this problem. And I think, Mukhtar, you raised that point, issue of funding, and I think that's the bottom line, the funding. How do we increase our funding? Again, it's a national challenge. I just listened to Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, who pointed out that Nigeria has revenue crisis. Now, how do you grow the revenue? Do we increase more taxes? In the condition of crisis, I'm very sure none of us would like to have that, including ASU. Do you increase fees in the university? I'm very sure that's not the way to go, as the case may be, because the children of the poor, may be disadvantaged. Now, how do you get the revenue to drive it? Again, do you even retrench workers? Again, because it's all about policy choices, as the case may be. And I think one thing you must give to this government is that in spite of the economic crisis, COVID crisis, recession 1, 2, 3, this government increased pay without necessarily downsizing or right-sizing and asking workers to go. Again, we have to make the choices. All those are the issues that will come to the table for proper discussions. Now, again, we can debate. So let me wrap up on this note. And I think these ideas have to flow from the floor of negotiation and discussion. I mean, I know how much is being spent on fuel subsidy. We have unveiled the NNPC, new NNPC. I mean, you know very well. That money that goes into subsidy, I don't know, Kingsley, whether you are getting fuel there at the appropriate price. Widely do so. Again, that money I thought should have gone for proper funding, including research institutions like me. So what I'm trying to say is that the challenges in our hand call for cooperation rather than confrontation.
Comrade Isaremo, thank you very much. I'm sure by the time we play back the DVD or recording of today's conversation, you will know that there is a tome of ideas that you three guests have brought up with regard to what to do. But something that is a bit striking, Claire, this is part of what Isaremo has mentioned. And I think we had a conversation sometime in the past that's a former trade unionist who then became a member of the House of Reps. His name escapes me now. He did say something about the training that unionists get versus the training that is available, for instance, to officers in the Federal Ministry of Labor, and that there appears to be a gap in the training of those negotiators in the Federal Ministry of Labor. But I will use that to say, for instance, for Isaremo, because if you look at the distinction that is made, those things are available in the industrial law. We know industrial law is taught in a number of universities. Industrial relations is also taught in a number of universities. But how much labor training do ASU officials get so that you can have different approaches to different issues? Claire?
That's a million naira question, Kingsley.
You would have said dollar.
Well, don't forget also that their business is in the classroom. But my question now will be to Imam Mukhtar, Imam. There seemed to be some kind of love lost between the conciliators, the ASU unions, and of course the body of the NLC at the moment, which is the basis for the call for protest and the prolonged strike. So now going forward, because what we are looking for here is how we can resolve the impasse without having to spark off any protest or strike. So might it be possible to expand, the stakeholdership to include those who are non-partisan in this whole dialogue?
Well, that will also be very crucial as well. Like I said earlier, part of the reason why we're faced with a chunk of our problem is because we think the solution is domiciled in one individual or one group of persons, which is basically not the case. Getting these other sectors involved is very crucial as well. But the one thing that must also be put into consideration or given cognizance is the fact that, you see, in every crisis situation, there is always, as enunciated by the onion model or the onion theory. The theory speaks just like an onion, and it says every conflict situation has several layers, and as you peel off one layer, you find that there's another layer. And also that you must take into consideration the fact that there is the position, the interest, and the needs of the players in that conflict situation, and all of that must be taken into cognizance if that conflict must be resolved. Getting all of these players into the brackets to be able to widen the web and have a broader conversation that will bring about more concrete and sustained resolution is very crucial. But the truth of the matter is, I'm trying to get this now to juxtapose this with what Kingsley mentioned earlier, that the academia, of course, as you know, is the ground from which all of these ideals and ideas that my Oga Comrade Issa Aremu, by the way, he's still a comrade though. I noticed him trying to suppress that comradeship while he was talking earlier and be diplomatic. The spirit of comradeship is still there. It is not questioned anymore, sir. So basically, this is a platform where these individuals are groomed from. It means that they know, yet they sit or step on the knowledge and refuse to act when it comes to negotiating for interests. Now, that is where I believe that some grounds have to be shifted. You cannot expect that whatever you bring to the table is exactly what you're going to get off the table. It doesn't work. Diplomatic bargaining must be brought on board. Alternative dispute resolution mechanisms must be brought on board. And what do these two things have in common? They tell you that you must be willing to shift grounds. You must be willing to ensure that you allow certain concession, some of your demands, so that you can allow for the center to hold. And this is something that we must all take into consideration. So whether we're expanding the web to include NLC, CUC, and whatnot, that factor is very critical. As a matter of fact, it should serve as a lifeline of the conversation. And there is also the need for the people in government circle to do well. A few days ago, or in the last few days, we have been hearing the confrontation between the Ministry of Labour and Ministry of Education. It is not great. It is not ideal. We shouldn't be hearing things like this. The Minister of Education is talking about how it is the Ministry of Labour that is causing all of. I don't want to go into all of the politicking, but we've been hearing all of this back and forth, and that shouldn't be the case. Let's have uniformity in the interest of our children, because in the end, it is about them. It is about their future.
All right, Dr. Mutari Imam, thank you very much. Back to the studios, Dr. Philip Hayab, very briefly, your closing thoughts.
Yes, I will call on ASU and the federal government and all the parties involved in this negotiation, including the NLC, to close their ranks, to ensuring that our schools are reopened, and then we do not have to lose anyone in any form of protest, because like most of the speakers have actually noted, in the times that we are, with the kind of insecurity that we have in our hands, we cannot afford to have people in the street and allow others to take advantage, only for us to come to say, had we known.
All right, Dr. Philip Hayab, Dr. Mukhtar Imam, and Comrade Issa Aremu, gentlemen, we deeply appreciate your contribution to our discussion this morning. Okay, so that does it for our conversation segment. Let's close by going over to our sports segment.
All right, once again, we all appreciate Oluwatobiloba Amusan for making Nigeria proud, as well as S.A. Bruman, of course, the 4x100 meters Nigerian team. And it's on this note, we thank you for watching Good Morning Nigeria again today. Join us tomorrow. I am Claire Adilabu Abdulrazak.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo saying do have a great day.